Hello and welcome to the next installment, the second part of our Tzitzit Learning program, where here I've separated out some of the things about the meaning and the deeper connection to this wonderful mitzvah. So previously we talked about the anatomy of a tzitzit, and some of that's going to play in here, but primarily we'll be looking at just cultivating a deeper connection within ourselves to this, and some general ideas of to get you started thinking about this. So again, we're going to start out with the mitzvah itself and the Torah verses that speak of this. So speak to the children of Israel and build them that they make them fringes in the corners of their garments throughout their generation. And they put upon the fringe of each corner a thread of blue, and it shall be to you as a fringe, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Hashem and do them, and that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you go astray, that you may remember and do all my commandments and be holy to your God. So again, last time we talked about some of the literal meaning, Rashi on this. But we're going to skip over that for this. We're going to go straight into the deeper connection here. So, keep bearing that in mind. Watch the other video. Get an idea. There is some meaning that you can derive from the literal interpretation and from the anatomy of a tzitzit. These videos aren't meant to be taken individually alone. Best if you watch both of them to really get this done. So if you haven't seen that one, I suggest going back to it, review it, and review the learning there, and then bring it into this one. So the Torah instructs us to attach tzitzit to our four-cornered garments, and we're going to explore together some of the details of tzitzit once again. So why, aside from being commanded to, do we wear tzitzit? What do the commentaries and sages tell us? And why do we choose to do this personally? That's what we're going to look at today. And I think simply put, we wear tzitzit as a reminder of the mitzvot and our obligation to do them. So Dat Zekenim on Numbers says the sequence of three verbs in our verse, you will see, you will remember, and you will do, explains the importance of this commandment and how fulfilling it will stimulate our heart and eyes to be loyal to God. Now, if I'm touching on things that we touched on in the other video, just bear with me. But it's an interesting thing to look at here, that in this particular commentary, we have stimulating our heart and eyes to be loyal to God, whereas in the original language of the commandment, that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you go astray. So what's the distinction here, right? One is that we, in the original commandment, are told not to seek after our heart and our eyes, not to follow after our heart and our eyes. And here, in this commentary, it's a little bit further explained that it will stimulate our heart and eyes to be loyal to God. So through seeing, remembering, and doing, we lead our heart and eyes to be loyal to God rather than the other way around. So to me, this is a very important point here, is our heart and our eyes are important parts of us. They're how we take in the world and how we feel the world around us. And a lot of times you can read this not following after your heart and eyes, and it gets a little confusing. When do you do it? When do you not? It's your heart and your eyes that are going to notify you of things going on in the world. They're not to be completely ignored, but they can be, I don't know if subjugated is a great word for this, but they can be subjugated to a higher will, to something more profound, and we can lead our heart and eyes to where they're recognizing the important things in the world, train our heart and eyes to not be leading us astray. So, do tzitzit accomplish this task on their own? Just having them there, attaching them to your garment, wearing them, during your prayers. Does that alone do it? What do we need to do in order to make this reminder effective, right? And I think that's it. I mean, that to me was sort of the answer to this question. Do they do it on their own? No, I don't think so. I mean, they're there, they're there, and the commandment isn't just that they're there. It's that you look at them, that you see them, that you remember, and that you do, right? So, while the tzitzit are a tool for this, they don't circumvent our own will and our own thoughts that are necessary to really fully embrace this mitzvah. So, what do we need to do? The answer is likely slightly different for each person, but we're going to look at some knowledge, start building with it. So, Rabbi Isaac ben Moses Arama gives some commentary on the threads, in particular their colors, from a philosophical and moral perspective. So, let's look at this. Also, the word for azure blue, techelet, is spelled with the same as tachlit. Tachlit being, the ultimate purpose, the end result, the end goal here. He who performs the mitzvah of tzitzit is equal to one who has achieved his tachlit, i.e. proximity to the divine. The immediate mitzvah, which represents this latter or intermediary concept, is that of tzitzit. The word itself, as in mesitz min hacharachim, means to view. So this is from Song of Songs, and you'll recognize this from Rashi's commentary in the previous video. We are commanded to wear tzitzit in order to help us remember the rest of the Torah. The techelet wool thread, more than anything, helps to remind us of our task to be both physical and spiritual beings. Now, I want to stop there for just a second, and we're kind of going to address this question a little bit later. But this blue thread, most, I think it's safe to say most Jews today are not using this blue thread due to some disputes. We're not going to get into techelet too much here, but due to some disputes about the origins of the dye, and whether or not it's appropriate to use the currently available dyes and things like that. But we need to think about this, and if techelet is something that you want to add to your tzitzit, then speak with your rabbi, explore these things, learn about these things, and make a decision there based on your rabbi's guidance and input into the situation, and make sure that this is really something that you're fully in agreement with and connect with. I'm not going to advise people either way on this as to whether this is the right thing for them, but I do encourage that people look into it. But we're talking about techelet here, and the text that we're reading says that this techelet wool thread, more than anything, helps us to remind us of our task to be both physical and spiritual beings. So without the techelet, without that present in the tzitzit, we still have to find meaning here and find how we can make this relevant, even if all our threads are white. And I think I've thought of a pretty decent way that I'll share at the end of this that helps. It helps us to remind us on our tasks to be both physical and spiritual beings, not abstract intellects such as angels, nor merely earthbound creatures like the animals. Just as blue is a halfway color between the all-absorbing black and the all-reflecting white, so Torah is an intermediary between us and God. As our sages put it, Yam, the ocean, Rachia, the sky, Kiseh HaKavod, the throne of his glory, and we'll look at that text a little bit later, represent the progression and act as the catalyst to bring about the fusing of the material and the spiritual world. Whereas Aristotle considers a behavior pattern which is based on the golden rule as the highest achievement man is capable of. Judaism considers any form of perception based purely on human criteria as deceptive and leading to faulty conclusions. Rather, our golden rule is the application of our intellect reinforced by the revealed law of God. The function of Tzitzit legislation is to remind us of this moral imperative. At the same time, Tzitzit teaches us to refrain from extremism in the application of all human characteristics. So there's a couple big things. That was a lot to take in all at once. I'm going to start with talking about physical and spiritual beings, not abstract intellects such as angels or earthbound creatures like animals. So this halfway point, right? We have both of these things within each one of us. The ability to serve God faithfully, truthfully, with all our hearts and all our souls. But we also have this pull of earthbound creatures, this pull of instinct, this pull of desire, this pull of something else that roots us to this world. And we need to recognize that we're connected to this world and to a higher world, and that we are in that intermediate space, and that there's good reason for that. And we can look at our seat and remember this. Now, blue being a halfway color, there's certainly other halfway colors, right? I think there's other reasons that blue is in the picture here, but it still is one of these halfway colors between black and white, this midway point. So it's something to reflect on. Even if we don't have techelet, we have the shamash. We have that one string, that one thread that winds around all the others. Now, the ocean, the sky, and the throne of glory, right? This idea of blue, this is going from thinking about the oceans going down to the deepest depths, right? This is of our earthly, physical world here. We're connecting that to the sky, and from the sky we're connecting that to the throne. The paved sapphire stones, the throne there. So, we can think about this as a linear progression from lower to higher, right? Connecting our world down here with that of one above, and realizing that we exist in this intermediate place. So then we move on to the philosophical side of this, Aristotle's golden rule, and I think the contrast here is that the golden rule, I think, sort of implies that this is all within us, right? There's an idea that this is all within us, but depending on where you are, depending on where you are in the world, the culture that you're a part of, that perception of things can change from place to place, from time to time, from where you are in your life. Any number of things can influence that. But if you have this higher moral imperative, right, the revealed law of God to connect to guide you in this, then the sway of the place, the time, the situation in the world is minimized, right? You have a solid foundation and a connection, and that's why the Tzitzit, commandment tells us that it's to remember to see, do, remember, see, remember, do. Excuse me. These commandments, right? To keep us on that moral imperative, to keep us connected to that. And Tzitzit teaches us to refrain from extremism in the application of all human characteristics. Now, what is extremism in this context, right? Is it something drastic? I don't think we need to look at it in such a, we tend to associate the word extremism with something very, heavy, very, and I'm not trying to diminish this, but what I mean to say is that extremism, I think, in this context, is when you act totally in one thing, right? You let me think of an example. You are in traffic. You're in traffic, and you're cut off by someone. They're driving, aggressively. They're rude. They're making gestures at you, things like that. Acting totally. If you respond in anger, right, and you act completely out of anger in that situation, then that's an extremism in the application of human characteristics, right? You have to temper that with something, right? You have to draw back on something. You have to not follow right after your heart, right? So you can use tzitzit in this way, right? You can use this as a reminder that you have all these different aspects symbolized maybe by the threads of the tzitzit, and then you have this shamash that it doesn't exclude any of the threads. It doesn't push them out. It doesn't remove them from the tzitzit. Rather, it binds them all up. So it wraps around them all. It contains them all, and it utilizes them all to make this holy object, right? So within ourselves, we have all of these attributes. We have anger, we have kindness, we have fear, we have persistence, we have all these different things. But we need to wrap them up in something holy. We need to pull them all together with something holy that gives them a structure to follow, a path to go on that elevates them, that brings them up from this low level where they are when they are just by themselves, and rather combines them with our heart and our mind and our soul. So you can see this is what I was getting at earlier. This is what I wanted to talk about earlier, that with techelet, it's not necessary that it's in there for this connection. You can just think of this one guiding string, this one leading string, this shamash, that's helping all these other ones out, that's binding them all together into something holy, into something that connects from where we are in this world of action all the way up to the higher worlds. So far we've talked about these threads and the different colors of them and things like that, and it poses a question. Without techelet, how do we represent these attributes that intermingle? So I kind of got ahead of myself, and this is the question that I'm trying to answer or help you answer. So something. It's just something to think about, right? Something for you to think about. How can you find the symbolism here, with or without techelet, that considers these attributes that intermingle with each other and remind us to stay on a central path. So that's some connection. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Duties of the heart provides an interesting take on tzitzit as one of the mitzvot that we carry out with our bodies. But in the following verse, Rabbeinu Bachya talks about inward service. Tzitzit and other mitzvot listed here help us to bridge the gap between body and soul when we carry them out with proper connection and kavanah. So, again, this idea of bridging the gap between body and soul is looking at that intermediary point, right? Our soul being on this high elevated level, our body being on this lower material level. So, duties of the heart. It is already familiar that man consists of body and soul. Both are among the benefits God has bestowed on us. One of these elements of our being is visible and the other is invisible. Therefore, we are accordingly under duty to render the Creator visible and invisible service. The outward service is the observance of the duties of the limbs. So, Bachya counts among these duties praying, fasting, giving charity, learning the Torah and teaching it, making a sukkah, waving a willow branch. tzitzit, mezuzah, mache, and similar precepts whose performance is completed by the physical limbs. So, as I read this, you know, with all respect to the author, who a great fan of, there are elements of these that are not necessarily completely outward, right? Praying is the first thing listed as something to do with the limbs, right? And an outward thing. Praying is something that do you do it completely with your body? No, like you have elements of your mind, elements of your heart and your soul in prayer, right? So you could argue that that praying is one of the ones that bridges the gap as well, right? Where you're combining, your body and your soul in this. These among the things that we outwardly do, tzitzit is listed here to stay on topic. So moving on to inward service, consists of the fulfillment of duties of the heart, such as to acknowledge the unity of God in our hearts, believe in Him and His Torah, to undertake His service, that we revere Him and humble ourselves before Him, and that we love Him, trust in Him, and give our lives to Him, that we abstain from what He hates, devote our actions to His name, that we reflect on the benefits He bestows, and similar things which are performed by the thoughts and sentiments of the heart, but do not associate with activity of the visible limbs of the body. So you can see how, the mitzvah of tzitzit combines this, because, again, going back to what we said earlier, having the tzitzit itself is not all it takes, right? The mitzvah of tzitzit is more complex than just having these threads attached to your four-cornered garment. The real mitzvah here is to see them, to think about them, to remember, and to do. And so, in that way, it activates these inner service elements, right? Believing in Him and His Torah, undertaking service, humbling ourselves, loving Him, trusting in Him, and giving over our lives to Him, abstaining from what He hates, and devoting our actions to His name. So you can see that this bridges the gap. Now, I would argue that prayer is another one, but we're talking about tzitzit here, so we'll just continue on that. I wanted to share, as part of this video, I debated on whether to keep this in this story of reminders. Some controversial, maybe some potentially controversial topics in here, and I'm sure we could argue and debate about the merits of this, I guess. But I found it to be a powerful story, and I'll try and read the story and then explain my thinking on it. And of course, everyone's going to have a different opinion, and that's okay. And it's about this personal connection that we're trying to develop here. So, it is taught, there is no mitzvah, however minor, that is written in the Torah, for which there is no reward given in this world and in the world to come. I do not know how much reward is given. Go and learn. The mitzvah of ritual fringes, an incident involving a certain man who was diligent about the mitzvah of ritual fringes. This man heard that there was a prostitute in one of the cities overseas who took 400 gold coins as her payment. He sent her 400 gold coins and fixed a time to meet with her. When his time came, he came and sat at the entrance to her house. The maidservant of the prostitute entered and said to her, "That man who sent you 400 gold coins came and sat at the entrance." She said, "Let him enter." He entered. She arranged 7 beds for him, 6 of silver and 1 of gold. Between each and every one of them there was a ladder made of silver, and the top bed was the one that was made of gold. She went up and sat naked on the top bed, and he too went up, in order to sit naked facing her. In the meantime, his 4 ritual fringes, his tzitzit, came and slapped him on his face. He dropped down and sat himself on the ground, and she also dropped down and sat on the ground. She said to him, "I take an oath by the Gapa of Rome that I will not allow you to go until you tell me what defect you saw in me." He said to her, I take an oath by the temple service that I never saw a woman as beautiful as you. But there is one mitzvah that Hashem our God commands us, and its name is ritual fringes. And in the passage where it is commanded, it is written twice, I am Hashem your God. The doubling of this phrase indicates I am the one who will punish those who transgress my mitzvot, and I am the one who will reward those who fulfill them. Now, said the man, the 4 sets of ritual fringes appeared to me as if they were 4 witnesses who will testify against me. She said to him, I will not allow you to go until you tell me, what is your name, and what is the name of your city, and what is the name of your teacher, and what is the name of the study hall in which you study Torah? He wrote the information and placed it in her hand. She arose and divided all of her property, giving 1/3 as a bribe to the government, 1/3 to the poor, and she took 1/3 with her in her possession, in addition to those beds of gold and silver. She came to the study hall of Rabbi Hia and said to him, my teacher, instruct your students concerning me, and have them make me a convert. Rabbi Hia said to her, my daughter, perhaps you set your sights on one of the students, and that is why you want to convert. She took the note the student had given her from her hand and gave it to Rabbi Hia. He said to her, go take possession of your purchase. Those beds that she had arranged for him in a prohibited fashion, she now arranged for him in a permitted fashion. The Gemara completes its point about the reward of mitzvot and points out how this story illustrates the concept. This is the reward given to him in this world, and with regards to the world to come, I do not know how much reward he will be given. So, long story, long read there for a video like this. But I found it very, very powerful, and I want to point out a couple of points that I found very powerful. One is obviously that there's this reminder, this visible reminder, right? That his actions are not meaningless, that his actions are not just going out there and having no impact. There's a connection that needs to be maintained, a right way to manage these things. And I think some of this gets illustrated too in a very interesting idea here, a deeper level of this maybe, that in the beginning of this story, she went up and sat naked on the top bed, and he too went up in order to sit naked facing her. So as he's going up, and there's this moment of where these two are exposed to each other here on this top bed. His fringes slap him across the face, and he goes down. He falls down low, and he's sitting on the ground, and she comes down too. Now remember, this is still, in the bedchamber. This is still, they're both physically, exposed to each other. They're in this situation, and up on the top, they were physically exposed to each other, and gazing on each other's nakedness and seeing that. And then once they were down at the bottom, that's when the feelings come out, the deeper part of themselves, and in a different way, they were exposed to each other. Once the reminder of the tzitzit took effect, right? It opened up something where now they're looking at each other and they're seeing the deepest parts, right? Her insecurities start to come out. She's asking him to explain, what's wrong with me that you came down here, right? And he's saying, look, there's nothing wrong with you. You're beautiful. You're amazing. And the desire is there, right? But this isn't the way. This isn't the way to do this in holiness, right? And so there's something about that opens something up in this story where the tzitzit went from this base physical level. The tzitzit took this story from this base physical level, looking upon each other in nakedness. Out of physical desire, down, not down, but rather up, right? Down in the story, but up, elevating, right, to a higher level from action to emotion, and to from emotion to mind, right? to connect all of these things together to elevate this. So, and then how does the story end, right? The story ends, she, pursues him back to his house of study. And they, ultimately, I think it implies that ultimately, she converts to Judaism, and she also, gave away 2/3 of her property, and 1/3 of it was to charity. The bribe is an interesting thing, and I can't exactly verify this, but my understanding of this is that there was sort of state-sanctioned prostitution, and so the bribe was necessary in order for her to leave her profession. So she gave 1/3 of her wealth in order to change her own life. She gave 1/3 in order to change the lives of others, to the poor, and she took 1/3 with her to continue into the future. And she converts to Judaism, and they proceed in their relationship in a way that's holy, in a way that's more connected to God instead of just connected to this physicality. Now, of course, that relationship is going to involve both sides of this. It's going to involve the physical side of this, right? With how they met, certainly there's that desire there. But it needs to be that intermediary point. There needs to be a connection to the holiness of things, right? And an elevation of that level of things up to a higher level to make them holy, to make them more significant and meaningful. So I thought that that's a good story to think about some of those things, about how, this reminder of Tzitzit can help us to elevate these things, to take these things that exist in the level of physicality alone, personal desire alone, and remember that there's a connection, and that we are in that intermediary place, and we need to forge that connection and elevate things. So this is only a small taste of some of the ways that you can think about Tzitzit to connect to this mitzvah and with God. I urge you, the viewer, the reader, to explore this deeply and lead your own heart and soul, lead them on a path that can make better use of this wonderful mitzvah. Don't let them lead you, but lead them. Show them the way. Through this, the hope is to make the words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai a reality, and that you feel the divine presence while wrapped in your beautiful and personally relevant talit with tzitzit. And we'll close with this. It is taught that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Hashem. This teaches that this mitzvah of tzitzit is equivalent to all the mitzvot of the Torah, and it is taught in another baraita. The verse states that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Hashem and do them. This teaches that looking at the tzitzit leads to remembering, and remembering leads to doing. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, anyone who is diligent in this mitzvah of tzitzit merits receiving the divine presence. It is written here that you may look upon it, Oto. And it is written there, you shall fear Hashem your God, and him, Oto, you shall serve. Just as Oto in that verse is referring to the divine presence, so too in this verse is referring to the divine presence. So, thinking about this, what does this mean? What does this tell us? It means that, this is, when you're looking at these things, these things I said, even there, don't think of them exactly as things. Think of them as something more than things. Think of them as a connection, a way to bridge the gap between this world of physicality and a world of divinity, a world of holiness, and use tzitzit as a way that you can dwell, receive, look upon the divine presence. That's what we're really trying to cultivate here, is that when you take those tzitzit with the kavona, with the intention, with you taking control and showing your heart and eyes the path. That you're forging that connection, that you're feeling the divine presence. I did have a little bit of an additional thought here on techelet, and I guess we'll go into it. It's taught that Rabbi Meir would say, what is different about techelet from all the other types of colors, such that it was chosen for the mitzvah of tzitzit? It is because techelet is similar in color to the sea, and the sea is similar in color to the sky, and the sky is similar to the throne of glory, as it is stated, and they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet the like of a paved work of sapphire stones, and the like of the very heaven for clearness, indicating that the sky is like a sapphire brickwork, and it is written, the likeness of a throne as the appearance of sapphire stone. So, just pausing for a moment, this sheds a little bit more light on what we looked at earlier, the ocean, the sky, and the throne. So it is taught that Rabbi Meir would say, the punishment for not attaching white strings is greater than the punishment for not attaching sky blue strings. Despite the fact that the techelet strings are more important, Rabbi Meir illustrates this with a parable. To what is this matter comparable? It is comparable to a king of flesh and blood who said to his 2 subjects that they must bring him a seal. The king said to one of them, bring me a seal of clay, and he said to the other one, bring me a seal of gold. And both of them were negligent and did not bring the seals. Which of them will have a greater punishment? You must say that it is the one to whom he said, bring me a seal of clay. And despite its availability and low cost, he did not bring it. So I added this in here. I wasn't really sure if I was going to talk about it, but since we did touch on decisions around techelet and making that decision, we'll talk about this a little bit. I think what Rabbi Meir is saying here is that if you don't do the techelet, right? I think let's separate out this punishment idea, because I think first it's putting that you're going to be punished if you just lesser, to a lesser degree, without the techelet. But I think there's still a lot of question as to whether techelet is really available, right? If it really meets the requirements and things like that, and if something's just simply not available, right? I think it's safe to say that we're not going to be punished for not doing something that's impossible for us to do. So let's just kind of put that in our context of how we look at this. The king here is still asking us for a seal, if we insert ourselves into this parable, right? The king is still asking us for a seal, and a seal of clay, right? And I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to really get that seal, right? We're trying to take that lump of clay and make it into something with meaning, right? We're trying to take this bundle of threads and make it something significant. It's not alone that it's just, the king isn't saying, go get me a lump of clay that I might make a seal. The king is saying, bring me a seal of clay. Right? And there's a lot involved in that process. And that's what we're trying to do here. So the key focus here is the seal, the intricate nature of it, the beauty, the meaning, the purpose that's put in this, and thereby taking something ordinary and earthly, like a lump of clay, and elevating it up to the level of the king by making it a seal. So with that, I'll conclude this video. I really hope that it's helped. I really hope that that through this and your own personal searching, that you find yourselves able to connect to this mitzvah, this powerful and important mitzvah, even more. And if you already connect to it, that it strengthened that connection and grew that connection. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.